Welcome to Creative Power, a podcast designed to help you claim the full spectrum of your creative potential. I'm Camilla Fellis-Arnold, and I'm passionate about discussing how we change the face of both the creative industries and how we interact with creativity itself, so that it nourishes our soul and helps us express ourselves with alignment, flow, and authenticity. Let's get started. Welcome to Creative Power. Today, I wanted to continue the conversation that we started last week, where I was talking about our seasons of creativity and how and what can affect our creative flow. One thing that can affect this flow is the seasons and energy of the year. And I wanted to highlight that in today's episode because it's the 1st of February, which is Imbolc in the pagan calendar. Now, personally and historically, I haven't followed the pagan wheel of the year until the last year or two. But when I did, I started to notice just how much of it really does coincide with our shifts in energy and focus. So I thought today would be a really great day to have our first guest to the podcast and hear from my collaborative partner, the fabulously knowledgeable Emily Tuck, as she explains a little bit more about Imbolc and what it means for us as creatives. So on that note, welcome Emily. Can you tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Hi Camilla, thank you so much for inviting me to be a guest. This is my first guesting experience, so hopefully we'll both survive.
I'm honoured.
So my name is Emily Tuck. I am a coach and kinesiologist. There's a lot of people out there that call themselves a coach, and I've used my experience as a holistic practitioner, a kinesiologist. I do lots of different EFT is one of my modalities, lots of different things, and I've blended them together to create coaching programs that specialise in introducing people to Lilith, who is I've got an relatively unknown goddess. She's also known as the first wife of Adam. But the reason that I specialise with her, or I've ended up working with her, is that she impacts our relationships, our intimacy, the legacies we leave to the world, and creativity. Hence why I'm kind of on your show today to share that with us, with your audience, because she shows up when people are about to begin a burst of creativity and helps to guide them through the process. So when we'd spoken about this 1,000 lifetimes ago, possibly only last year, we spoke about the idea that it would be useful to come on your show. So thank you so much for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming. And at some point we will be doing more episodes together talking about Lilith specifically with creativity, because it's fascinating. But so last week, the reason you're here today is I was talking about seasons of creativity and this ebb and flow of how it comes to us and then it goes away and we feel restricted and there's obstacles and we're energized. So I was talking about that in terms of internally, but also externally, what can affect us. And I was thinking about, as we were coming up to Imbolc, the pagan wheel of the year, what are we moving into? Can you tell us more about the pagan wheel of the year?
Of course I can. So just to give some context, I'm also not a pagan either. I was raised as a Catholic for what it's worth. So it is just watching those rhythms, but I've always been fascinated by them. So, and watching the rhythms of the year. So I'm not speaking as a pagan, just to be clear. Essentially, there are 4 major festivals or 4 major points in the year, and they all share a midpoint between these major festivals, which is known as a solstice. So some people know about things like the winter solstice, the spring solstice, that sort of thing. But they're actually the minor events that sit around these 4 festivals. Depending on which side of the hemisphere you're on, you're either doing one or the other, because you're either in your winter or you're in the summer. So we, in the Northern Hemisphere at the moment, we're on tomorrow, or today, is the 1st of February, it's Imbolc. And that is the very, very beginnings of spring, essentially. It's not quite springtime, the lambs aren't out and about doing things, the calves aren't being born. That comes in about 6 or 7 weeks' time. that there is a beginning of a stirring. I remember seeing an image for Imbolc, and it was a picture of a woman in hibernation underneath the tree roots. So imagine that she's gone into hibernation during the winter in the tree roots. And she was stretching up as if to break the soil. Not yet, but she was beginning to think about stirring. So emotionally, it's a bit like that bit where you wake up in the morning and then you kind of go, oh, and you curl up back under the duvet for another 25 minutes. Because the thing you need most after an 8-hour sleep is an extra 25 minutes, right? What it does is it's like I'm almost ready, but I haven't got that forward momentum yet. But what it also does is it's not quite the depth of winter. It's not the depth of Christmas where you just don't want to leave the house. It's cold, it's dark, I don't want to know, it's the shortest day. You're beginning to come out of your shell a little. So for me, Imbolc is a really interesting time because we all start our New Year's resolutions on the 1st of January because we think it's a great idea. And actually, we're not ready. And the reason you go to the gym for all of about 2.5 minutes, or can't be bothered, or get to the end of January and wonder what the hell you're doing, is because the forward energy of creating something new about yourself hasn't started yet. You're not ready. So this is an opportunity to revisit those New Year's resolutions, or revisit what do you want to do in 2022. I found this time last year that I was presented with quite the crossroads. And what was I going to do? Was I going to say yes to this possibility of my future self, or was I going to say no? I chose to say yes, and it has rippled for the whole of the 12 months and continues to do so. So this is a really interesting opportunity to think about, well, where do I want to be? What do I want to become? And then as you move through the year, every 13 weeks or so, you hit another major festival, and they have a completely different energy to them. So they become about whether we're high in activity in the height of the summer. Are we harvesting when we come round to kind of August time and we're bringing in the harvest of what we've set our intentions at Imbolc? 6 months later, what are we harvesting? And then what do we need to let die as we come into the beginning of the winter in order that we can plant seeds that we can harvest in the next 6 weeks? So it's a real opportunity to take a review and go, what do I want? So we can use it all year. And you and I used it very, very much this year. We kind of learned as we went.
Yes.
But one of the things I noticed was that when we were looking at what we're going to do next in our respective businesses, where we're going to support one another, what was our next actions, about every 6 weeks, we kind of lost sight, but we lost our momentum. And you and I learned to we looked at what were those natural flows. And I remember the 1st of May last year was Beltane, and it was the first chance we'd had a chance to look at this, because we hit the 1st of February this time last year. We hit the 1st of February without knowing it. We hit it running, and we kept going, and we were dealing with whatever was coming up emotionally, whatever we were creating, whatever the world was throwing at us. We didn't have time to catch our breath. We kept going, and what happened was we hit the 1st of May, and I remember the phone call you and I had going, I'm so tired. I don't think I can keep going anymore. I'm so tired.
I remember that.
In a way, we were right, because the energy that had kept us going through from Imbolc all the way through, energy had changed. Something felt off, something felt different. If we kept going in the same way, we weren't going to be able to keep going. And what you and I did was we took the weekend off. We downed tools, we walked away from the laptops, we didn't take a phone call apart from to each other, and we just did nothing. But we could come back a couple of days later and look with fresh eyes, with the new energy of the new season, with everything that we had. By the end of the year, we'd actually built a ritual around that. So we looked at those ebbs and flows, and we used them constructively for the back end of the year. We got to May without knowing what we were doing, but you and I started carving that out consciously and actively. And that's part of what I think we want to share with your readers, to your listeners today, and your people that are interested in what you do. Because I say readers because you're writing something. But I want to be able to show you how to use it actively. We did it reactively.
Yes, we did. So how do you think creatives specifically can use this Wheel of the Year and apply it to their practice?
So if you're using the wheel of the whole year, there will be times when your creative concepts are incubating, when it feels like there's not a lot going on the surface. Maybe you haven't been near a paintbrush, maybe you haven't picked up a pen, maybe you haven't been anywhere near your charcoals for a while, maybe you've put your cross stitch in the cupboard. Because it just doesn't feel like the energy of the creative thing is coming to meet you. I remember reading somewhere in a book about the idea of waiting in the creative desert for the creativity of the thing to come and meet you. And also this idea, I think Liz Gilbert talks about it in Big Magic, about how creative ideas make a contract with you.
Yes.
And it's up to you whether you take them up. So this idea of there are certain times when it's time to just let that sit and agree the contract and then wait for the energy to be right. So Imbolc is about what am I choosing? What am I agreeing? Now, the rest of the year will put that in motion. But what am I choosing to put in? I don't know the how yet. I haven't got a clue about the steps. I don't know who's going to help me do it. But I'm agreeing to who I choose to be this year. Who do I choose to be for this point in my creative project? And as you then go through it, as you come through the year, then there's a season of high activity. And it's like do. And then there's the harvest, and what have I got to show for my 6 months of work? And that's kind of around the harvesty time. And then having done so, what's the editing? What needs taking out? Because really it's dead when we separate the wheat and the chaff. And then I'm not ready for the next project yet, so I need to now sit in this, let the project finish and really let it just sit. It's okay to not do anything with it. And maybe it's gone out on exhibition, maybe it's gone to the publishers, but the energy has run out. And I remember last year writing something, and something happened, and I needed to write the story while it was fresh. And I sat and I could not put the pen down for 5 days.
Wow.
I was writing constantly for 5 days, and I didn't think of myself as a writer at the time. I just needed to get it out. But I remember the moment when the pen stopped writing, and I say that. And I don't mean I stopped writing. I mean the energy just ran out on the thing. And I put the pen down and I said, and now it's done. I haven't looked at that project again for the whole of the year, but I know that when I'm ready to pick it back up again, I just felt it finished. I felt it harvest and it was done. So it's allowing yourself permission, I guess. These are times when it can incubate, and it doesn't mean that because you haven't written for a day you're not a writer, or because you haven't painted in a month that means your talent's gone down the toilet. Maybe it's in a incubation phase. Maybe you're spending this time. You talked to me about it before, this idea of collecting all the pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
A little piece of, almost like a collage or a piece of fabric or a thing, and you're going around like a magpie picking up things, and you don't know why they fit together. But you just collect them. Maybe this is the bit where you're collecting things like, I don't know what jigsaw this is making, but there's something, I'm just following the breadcrumbs right now. That's what Imbolc's for, because we're not ready yet to do. But I'll just put it together. And I'll put it all in my little box of tricks, or I'll put it all in my collaging box, or, if you're into dressmaking, it's your dressed up box and your fabric. But what you've done is allowed that time to take you into the next phase. And when you're ready, you'll take the next jump.
I've experienced that myself, because last year I did some outlines for some books, which at some point I will write. And I felt at the same time I was writing some courses. And for some reason, neither of these things I could get over the line. Even though I had the outlines, I knew exactly what I was going to put in them. I just could not get started. And it wasn't until we've kind of come round into this new year, and I had this moment of clarity where suddenly I saw, oh, there was a bit I was missing. and you just kind of sit on it, and you're like, I was very frustrated with myself, like, why can't I just get this done? Because I've got the plan, I know what I'm going to do, and I really just could not get it together. But then when I saw that missing piece, suddenly I realized that actually I'd been trying to force something to happen that wasn't quite ready yet. I was missing like this little piece that would add a richness, add a depth to what I was trying to create. I think is really, really important, and also something that we put too much pressure on ourselves to. As soon as we have the idea, we have to put it out there. And what I'm hearing from you is actually, no, it's okay. And this is what we were talking about with Seasons of Creativity last week. It's okay to not be writing right now. It's okay to sit on the idea and let it incubate and grow and add depth and flavor. I mean, think about it in terms of cooking. You'll put something in a marinade and you won't just cook it immediately. You'll let it soak up all that flavor and develop. But as creators, we forget to do that.
Well, the way I think about it, and it's just occurred to me as you've described it, the pagan wheel's been around for however many thousands of years. These people didn't have a microwave or a pressure cooker. They did stuff in a stew over like 5 hours, and then you ate it. You let it marinate, you let it, And I was listening to a comedian, I can't for the life of me remember who it was, but I have a feeling it was Dylan Moran. But the idea was that while these things were marinated and being made and being created, whether it was the Celtic Welsh stew, or whether it was like roast beef that took 3.5 hours in the oven, whatever it was, in that time, the people had time to write the poetry, do the paintings, and then he then suddenly went, and then you've got like cheese on toast. Oh, that's 35 seconds. There was no time to write, an essay or a thesis on something, because there was no time to allow that marinating process. Oh, cheese on toast. Oh, it's done. Never mind.
Well, we do live in this world of instant gratification, and everything's got to be done now, and at speed. And I think we have lost the idea of creativity can take time. It's okay that it takes time. And I think what we're trying to say in this episode is let yourself have that time, feel into those rhythms of the year, and like listen to what Imbolc has to say, what kind of shifts it's going to bring us for our energy right now.
And I think the other thing it says to me is that there are certain bits that happen at certain times for a reason. As you say, we live in a world where it's everything's now, and everything's in a hurry, and everything, if it hasn't happened, like straight away. But you and I, during 2021, you and I lived the programs that I have gone on and built, and I am now administering to other people. But unless we had taken the time to live it, we even had something like that the other day. We were doing something and we were working on a project together, and it just evolved. The thing almost happened to us, and we sat there and went, I don't know what it is we've just done. On the surface, we were completing some paperwork, but at the back end of it, I had seen in the corner of my eye something that you and I will use for the rest of our lives, the rest of our professional lives. I don't know what it is I've seen. It's in the corner of my eye, and if you ask me to come up with anything that sounds coherent on this podcast, I'd be wasted, because I don't know enough about what I've seen. But I know enough about the rhythms that will sit. It's almost like it's in the Imbolc phase. So I'm going to wait. But when I come and meet it again in 12 weeks' time, or 6 months' time, or a year's time, I will be able to go, that's the next piece I need to this. And as I go through it, I'll know when the time's right. I'll know when the time's right to harvest what we just saw. But I also now don't beat myself up when I can't. I'm not trying to make it make sense tomorrow, because I know that I haven't let it go, and it will come right round. So yeah, it gives you permission to let those flows happen naturally, and let those flows inform what you do spend time on as well. Because you can also feel when something is finished. You and I spoke about this more recently, but sometimes we need to let things go as well as you come up to Imbolc. What has happened since Christmas and since the winter solstice that really it's dead. It's died. If I drag this and carry this, so just as we want everything now, we also think we have to carry everything with us forever and ever. So does our creativity, does that project need to be put to bed? Actually, do you know what? It's not ready to come out, but it's also in its current form, it's dead. If there's anything worth keeping, it will come back round. And if not, it'll just die away. But actually, this thing, if I carry this thing with me, it's dead. I was doing a project and I just was like, I hate this project. I thought I loved it. It filled me with joy. And now if I look at this piece of paper, I'm going to stab someone in the face, possibly myself. And that's not how people want to feel about their creative endeavours. It's not how they want to feel when they feel the flow of inspiration running through them. But actually, by the time I finish painting this thing or writing this book, if I ever see it, it'll be too long ago. You know what? You don't want creativity to be an obligation just because you didn't have the grace to let it die when its current form, its phase was dead. Doesn't mean the whole project's dead. But in trying to either carry everything with us or have it done yesterday, we're going against the natural flows, I think. So it was just as important. And so you and I have now started to use these phrases. So this episode goes out on the 1st of February, and you and I have booked an hour, and we will spend time looking both strategically at what's our next moves for the next 6 to 8 weeks, but also energetically, what is dead, what we need to release. We've actually built a ritual that's almost like a forgiveness and a gratitude ritual of what have we done in the last 6 weeks? What are we going to be doing in the next 6 weeks? And sometimes those aren't 6 weeks apart, sometimes they're 12 weeks, but we make sure we do at least one for each of the 4 main festivals. But let that old energy go, bring that new energy in. And one of the things that I love about that ritual that we've started to do is I know that if I feel like I'm dragging myself a little because I'm getting close to Imbolc and the energy of Christmas is all the stuff I did around Christmas, I'm just bored of it now. It's okay. Because I won't be carrying it for the next 3 months. I can let it go. But also, I like that bit where we close our eyes and we imagine our future selves and we go, what is she impressed with? What is she created that we haven't made yet? And therefore, it also gives us the inspiration to go into the new phase. It's okay, she has achieved it, or it's in motion. So I've got the momentum to keep going as well.
I do love the ritual we've created. It's like a bookend for me. It really breaks up because particularly as a self-employed person, I've been freelance before this for God knows how many years. It's about a decade now. You just keep going and going and going. And when you're on your own, it can be really hard to kind of realize that actually it's okay to let these things go and to keep that forward momentum. So these stops that we've now introduced, these rituals for these different festivals, it really has given me a lightness, because you can then just say, do you know what, I'm taking a moment to acknowledge the things I've done and be grateful for them, and for the things that I didn't do, I can let go of those too. And you just take that moment to kind of let that all seep in and then say, okay, now what am I choosing now? Where am I going now? And it's really powerful. I have to say, I mean, we're recording this the day before Imbolc. I am really looking forward to our ritual tomorrow. It's really needed, because for me, the biggest thing that I have done in this last period since the solstice back in December was I have just handed in my coaching paperwork for my ILM qualification. It's been ongoing since last January, so well over a year now. I started at the beginning of January, like 390 days later, here I am, handed it in, and I'm ready to energetically let it go as well, so that I've got space to bring in some new things, look at those projects that I was trying to get over the line, haven't been able to for various reasons. And now we can say, well, okay, Imbolc, what new energy are we bringing in? Where is our focus now?
And I've interestingly enough used it in a similar way, that knowing and watching you take that for over 12 months. So not only, I mean, I saw your LinkedIn post 390 days. I think that was really significant, because even if you allow something to take a full 12 months to come round, so Imbolc to Imbolc, as it were, 390 days goes beyond that.
Yes.
So even if it wasn't dead, it is now. And it should have been, in a way, you'd have benefited from getting rid of it sooner. But you didn't know what you didn't know. I have used that wisdom of those seasons and what we've learned in 2021 to say, right, I'm at this phase of my coaching qualification because I think it's important that we get the paperwork. But I started mine in October. So I began mine fairly close to Samhain or just before. And actually, I know whatever happened with the paperwork and filing all the coordinates, I cannot go beyond Beltane, which is 1st of May. It's not about rushing or trying to do it quickly. It's about, I would need to recalibrate the whole piece if I take it any longer. And I just would feel the energy run out, and then I start to resent it, and then I start to slow down. So we've learned, or I've learned as a consequence of partly watching you and partly watching these rhythms, to set myself deadlines for the year based on these different events. So, how can we use Imbolc now? The things I'm doing over the next X number of weeks, or the things I've done, is I'm re-looking at those New Year's resolutions. Do I want them? Were they a whole bunch of socially acceptable and socially desirable answers, but really I don't care? Actually, did I want to still achieve it, but maybe my road to achieving it is different? So, for example, I signed up on the 31st of December, beginning of the new year. I signed up for a multi-author, to be part of a multi-author book. The first thing that will have been published with my name on it. So in terms of my creative endeavours, it's quite a challenge. It's quite a step out of my comfort zone.
Big deal.
It's making me a little bit scared, but that's okay. I also know that I wasn't ready to write anything. But I'm going to be using this power of Imbolc to go, right, well, you've committed yourself. But I wasn't ready to say anything about it yet. I wasn't ready to write anything, and I hadn't put pen to paper at all. But I'm using this time from the 1st of February, because now it's starting to, the creative juice is starting to flow a little, or at least I'm beginning to let it incubate a bit more. What can I use during February, or maybe between February and March, to get that over the line and get that done? Am I going to need any support? So because of my toolkit and because of the work I do, what's my subconscious self-image that maybe needs a review at this point, so that I can see myself as somebody who writes rather than not? If my subconscious self-image says I'm not a writer, I'll never get that written in a lifetime. But what can I do? How can I use this time to support the choices I want to make? If I'm choosing it to Imbolc, what are the actions that then need to happen? What support do I need? Do I need to hire a coach? Do I need to go and find a hypnotherapist? And do I need to work with somebody like myself so that I can put those into motion and keep those moving forward? One of the things I'm really looking forward to is you're doing Writing with the Moon, and it starts today on Imbolc.
Yes, it does.
So that's how I'm going to use it. I'm going to write along with the moon and act it as a 90-day project. But I'm going to use it to keep me on task, keep me on board. And, again, working with those natural ebbs and flows. There'll be a wax and a wane of the moon, and use it. Work with my own natural rhythms and let that feed my creative practice rather than hinder it.
I think that's really nice. It's just one of those things that I think it gives you permission to breathe. I mean, for me, just that idea that I can close that chapter, that's huge. That I can just, start a fresh page. I can spend this time choosing who I want to be in the world, and I can choose it again. It gives you a lift shift, doesn't it?
Yeah. And they talk about, there's this concept of like Blue Monday, and like the third week in January is a really depressing time. And some people got mixed views about that, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, or if it's just like a marketing thing. But actually, I think there's an argument for it. 10 days later is Imbolc. I think there's a thing for almost starting too early. 1st of January, right, let's start. No, we're not ready. And they fight it. And interestingly, the Chinese New Year is in February for a reason.
Yeah.
They know that you're not ready. The Chinese New Year also happens to also be tomorrow.
Yes, it does.
On Imbolc. It isn't always, because it moves slightly, but it's always in February, but not in January. There's a reason. Because now it knows that it's time to look at those fresh ideas, those new concepts. So, use this as an opportunity to review what you do and don't want to be in 2022 and beyond. That's how I'm using the power of Imbolc.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with what you're saying. And I think that's the biggest message that I think we want to give the listeners, that, take this time to choose who you want to be. What do you want to commit to, recommit to, reframe? What do you want to let go of? It's okay that those New Year's resolutions or those daily creative practices, etc., it's okay if they didn't really take off in January. You can start again. The pagan wheel of the year, looking at the Chinese New Year, all of these things start in February for a reason. So give yourself permission to stop mugging yourself about it. It's okay. We are so hard on ourselves about these things. Like, just give yourself a break, cut yourself some slack. It's okay. You can recommit in the next breath. Yeah. And choose and choose and choose again. You can always choose again.
Yeah. So that's what I would look at it and go, who do I want to choose to be in the world? What's the change I want to make around my creative practice so that can be created? If that's the legacy I want to give the world, then what do I choose today so that I can harvest it later? But the one thing I really love from both our ritual, but also from the way that I now approach these festivals, is if I looked downwind or downstream into my future, what's the thing I'm using the power of this festival that my future self is proud of?
Oh, that's lovely.
What is it I've done? What is it she's benefiting from that I've chosen today? And sometimes when I do a meditation like that or a ritual like that, my future self is not always impressed with the choices I've made. Sometimes she's going, come on, we could have done more with this. And sometimes she's looking at me going, well done. I'm so pleased that you kept going. And I love that part of our ritual where we call in who needs to be here from 6 weeks ago, who needs to be here in the next 6 weeks. And I remember there was a choice I was making, and my past self was almost saying, well, I'm glad that 6 weeks later you are in a better position to make this choice. And the version of me from 6 weeks later was going, thank God that you have also stuck with it. I remember when we did our one for the solstice. Nope, it wasn't the solstice. We did one back in October for Samhain, for Halloween, for and we sat there in the end of October, beginning of November, and we called our future selves and our past selves in, and we're like, right, how can we use the power of this? And myself from the solstice at Christmas and the solstice on the 21st of December was like, thank God you stuck with something that, quite frankly, other people wouldn't have had the endurance to keep going, but you kept going. And you and I both know that what essentially happened was we had a whole set of clients arrive on Christmas Eve.
Yes.
Well, if I hadn't stuck with it, if I'd gone, well, this isn't working, and just given up and thrown everything out, that would never happen. But because I was using the power of these phases, I could look at it and say, she's told me to stick with it, so I'm going to stick with it. So I'm really looking forward to tomorrow to find out what the version of me further up the run or further back the run is happy about and benefiting from and reaping the rewards of.
Yeah, me too. It's really powerful stuff. And I know that at some point, I don't know when or what it's going to look like, but we will share this ritual with the world because it's so impactful. It really is. Thank you so much for sharing. It's been really, really interesting. And I hope that my listeners are getting an idea of who they want to be, realizing that actually it's okay to let some stuff go. It's okay to re-choose, recommit, reframe, all of the words. And I hope that they've enjoyed listening to us have a little ramble. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been such a pleasure. How can people find you if they want to know more?
So if you want to know more about either the work I do or Lilith, then my website is emilytuck.com. I have a podcast of my own called Lilith Speaks. And you can also connect or find me on LinkedIn, as I much prefer the energy of that sort of social platform myself. So find me on LinkedIn, check out Lilith Speaks and emilytuck.com if you want to know more about working with me as a client and or as a couple.
And she does it very, very well, I might just add. I will put all those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks for listening to Creative Power today. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and consider leaving a review. To find out more ways you can connect or work with me, please visit www.camillafellisarnold.com/creative power.